Okay, thank you
I'm like, let
everyone.
me fix my hair.
Thanks everyone for taking the time to come to this Lunch and Learn presented by the Council of Aging of Ottawa. So the Council of Aging of Ottawa, or COA, is a local nonprofit based in Ottawa. They work to advance the well-being of Ottawa's older adults. They host various events within the community, such as the Smart Aging and Helping Aging programs that prepare older adults for important decisions they may have to make in key transition points in life, and also support physical and mental well-being. Other things undertaken by the COA include a very cool initiative called the Snow Moles. So it's a program that promotes pedestrian safety and walkability by allowing people to report features that are safe or unsafe in their community. For example, if there's a bench that's been cleared of snow that people can sit on, that can be reported, or sidewalks that haven't been plowed. The COA also has committees that work to promote the well-being of older adults in key areas like health, income security, transportation, Francophone affairs, and housing, which is why we're here today. So this presentation is brought to you by some of the Age-Friendly Housing Committee members, Valerie, Mary, Grace, and Bonnie, who I'm very pleased to introduce to you today. So the Age-Friendly Housing Committee aims to explore and advocate for appropriate, affordable, accessible, and available housing on the continuum from independent living to long-term care for older adults in the Ottawa region. So I personally had the wonderful opportunity to join the COA during my last placement of my master's program, where I got to work and learn from Bonnie, who is my supervisor, and also work with the housing committee members on this call. So I know firsthand that the hard work and time they put into making a meaningful impact in the lives of older adults in Ottawa. And then I can say that my work with COA and the Age-Friendly Housing Committee definitely sparked my interest in housing and led me to work here at CMHC. So I'm very excited to kind of have them back. It's like a full circle moment here. So with that, I will pass it on to the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much, Brianna, for that wonderful introduction. In fact, it's sort of, I'm shortening what I'm going to be saying a bit here. So I'm going to be talking about the three people here. Mary, Val, and I are all members with Bonnie of the Age-Friendly Housing Committee. And we explore and advocate for appropriate, affordable, accessible, and available age-friendly housing. So it's wonderful that we're here today to speak to you, to CMHC, which leads the Federal Housing Initiative. So we're made up of, our housing committee is made up of 15, we're about 15 volunteers. Here's a picture of part of our committee. And we're very passionate about housing. Many of us are, overhoused seniors who are looking for new innovative models to allow us to successfully age in place. So we're all volunteers for the most part, with a few key advisors, including a representative from the City Planning Department. And our purpose, as I mentioned, is to advocate for appropriate, affordable, accessible, and available housing so that we can remain as independent as long as possible. And while we don't consider ourselves experts, we bring a passion and lived experience to our concern about the availability of quality housing and choice for older adults. And so moving on, today we want to, we actually welcome this opportunity to speak with you because part of our objective is to build awareness of the housing needs of older adults and innovative age-friendly housing models. We want to build awareness of how we engage with older adults in the community to become part of the solution for their housing needs. And we also want to see support for building and creating innovative, affordable, and accessible housing options that meet the needs of older adults. So I'm just going to show you, so today during our presentation, we'll talk about older adults in Ottawa and Canada. What is age-friendly housing? What are the solutions to allowing people to successfully age in place? Some of the innovative solutions that we talk about, especially naturally occurring retirement communities, and some of our initiatives related to information and education for our older adults. and key messages. So I'm going to turn it over now to Bonnie to talk about older adults in Ottawa and Canada.
Thank you very much, Grace. It is my distinct pleasure to work with a team of about 150 volunteers across the organization, across the 4 different committees. And don't tell the other ones, the Housing Committee is my favorite.
She says that to all the other committees.
Don't I? But first, I wanted to share with you some language, and you will hear us use the term older adults. While seniors is kind of the more generic term that's being used, often depicting, describing people over the age of 65, and definitely are used widely in policy and research for access to benefits and the like. We tend to embrace the term older adults, and in Ottawa, older adults with the city is defined as 50 plus. So understanding that life course perspective. We do not use the term elder or the elderly. Elder tends to be an Indigenous term, and we do not want to appropriate that term. And the elderly would be the same as the youth. It's not necessarily well received, although it is perpetuated in a lot of medical research. So let's share with you a little bit about Ottawa's older adults, keeping pace of our growing, changing, and aging population. And Brianna was instrumental in pulling this. This was her document that she developed. So older adults in Ottawa are growing in number. In fact, they make up approximately 17% of the population today. And within the next 7 to 8 years, we're going to see them more than 23%, almost 25% of the population. And I'm showing numbers in Ottawa because we are a local agency. I did also want to highlight there's lots of data nationally. And here you can see that the proportion of older adults has been growing across the country. And depending on where you're coming from, the Atlantic regions, as well as the westernmost provinces are definitely increasing in numbers more significantly. It's important to know that older adults in Ottawa are, and across the country, are active, engaged. They are more likely to volunteer and often give more hours. They continue to work. 25% of older adults between the ages of 65 and 71 continue to work either part-time or part-year. But that group, the 50 to 70, will be retiring soon. Older adults do take on caregiving roles more, for the most part, they vote more often in all elections. We also know that older adults are quite diverse, and this breakdown of population is different across the country. But in Ottawa, 50% identify as having a disability. 35% are born in another country, so have aged in Canada who have spent more than 35 years in Canada. 23% have a first language other than French and English, and we have a very large Francophone population in Ottawa. We also have a significant rural population, and about 9% of older adults live in rural communities. Older adults have a lower, fewer live in poverty, but for those who live in rental or women who haven't been attached to the labor market are more likely to live in low income, and about 5% identify with the LGBTQ plus community. When we talk about affordable and accessible, and we'll get into some of those definitions, we know that many older adults are living in unaffordable housing. While they live with their partner, many of them live alone, and 17% are unhoused, according to our Ottawa point in time count. They're not moving, and the sell rate, and that's from the CMHC report on the real estate market of older adults, So we're not seeing a turnover because they don't have options. They're more likely to be on a social housing wait list, and actually very few end up in long-term care, despite the fact it's not their preference or choice, or in retirement homes. So we do know that older adults have gender differences, and we do have older women. So we need to take into consideration the needs of older women, as well as where you live in our city and across the country. And here is just a small map of Ottawa, and you see high numbers of older adults living in key communities, as many as 55% living alone in Lower Town, which is a significant number of older adults living alone. So let's move on to how we define age-friendly housing. And I'm going to bring it up a notch and talk about age-friendly communities as inclusive and accessible community that promotes active aging. And with that, it is a community development approach, taking a look at both the physical environments like transportation and housing, the social environment, and older adults' ability to participate, feel included, volunteer, be employed, accessing information, as well as community supports and health services, as well as outdoor spaces. So what does come to mind when you think of age-friendly housing? And if we're going to use that definition of age-friendly, it's inclusive and accessible that promotes active aging. You're probably very familiar with this housing continuum, but for the most part, when we talk about housing for older adults, most people think of the retirement homes and communities and long-term care that are traditional. Yet retirement homes are very expensive, and many people do not want to live in long-term care. And in fact, if we took a look at the stats that were just presented, we're having a high number of older adults being in homeless shelters and in emergency shelters, being on wait lists, although they're a small proportion of community housing, and living in unaffordable housing. So from that perspective, age-friendly housing is central to the well-being of people of all ages and the needs of older adults that change over time. So we've identified the 4 A's of housing, where affordable costs less than 30% of your before income tax. You're very familiar with that. We do know that 25% of older adults in Ottawa are renters, and approximately 54% of them spend more than 50% of their income. When we talk about accessibility, we talk about the design and modification for safe living. We know health and mobility becomes an issue. When we think about appropriate, we talk about meeting the changing needs as they age, our ability to maintain safe, clean homes with access to transportations, amenities, and other services. And then available. Grace mentioned being overhoused. There isn't very many options. We are not moving. So allows people to age in place and in their community. And we know that Ottawa has declared a housing crisis, and older adults are finding it more difficult to find suitable and available homes that can be adapted to their needs on a fixed income, and that many of these options are financially out of reach. And with a growing population of older adults, we want better and more innovative options, because the majority of us do want to age in place and in the community. And I'm going to pass it over to my lovely colleague, Valerie.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be with you today. Too bad I can't see you, because it's always nice to see who's on the other end of our presentations. But anyway, I'm here to talk to you about the work we've done on putting together a proposal for the city to think about in terms of what can we do to develop more age-friendly housing options in Ottawa. So we did a lot of research and we had a lot of conversations with experts and with city councilors. And this resulted in the development of a municipal platform leading up to the 2022 municipal election, which we continue to share with decision makers and with the broader Ottawa community. We had a difficult time, but we did narrow it down to 5 recommendations, which was difficult because I think our list was at 12 in the beginning. So these are the 5 critical recommendations that we have for Ottawa. Number 1 is to increase the number of available and affordable housing options, including rental units to match the older adults demographic. That's 17 or 18% now, but will be 25% by the year 2036. This means ensuring that 18% of new units are suitable for older adults right now. Affordable and accessible housing must be central to city planning and needs to be considered as part of the public good in much of the same way as schools, libraries, hospitals, and community centers. Units need to be in walkable and connected neighborhoods and near amenities such as transportation, shopping, and other community services. And in addition, our Ottawa, the city's new official plan, needs to establish and adhere to a consistent home to rent ratio, which Bonnie mentioned earlier. Rent should be based on a percentage of a person's income, and that should be no more than 30%. It is slow. Our second recommendation was that the city should incorporate the principles of universal design in all new builds and ensure that 20% of all retrofit units are accessible. Universal design, also called inclusive design or barrier-free design, is the design and structure of an environment so it can be accessed and used to the greatest extent possible by all people, regardless of their age or ability. The challenge, and it's a huge one, the city needs to support and advocate for the development of common standards of accessibility, building codes across all levels of government, provincial, federal, and municipal. They all need to have the same definition. Okay, recommendation number 3. A home is more than 4 walls. Our aging population is diverse with a wide range of incomes, levels, family structures, gender identities, ethnic background, and physical and mental abilities, as Bonnie mentioned earlier. We need much more imagination to build many more affordable rental units, more modest homes, and small multifamily units that meet housing needs to accommodate and integrate the diverse and vulnerable groups in our society. Not to mention the many people in Ottawa who do not have a bed to sleep in tonight. And Bonnie also mentioned that 17%, that's a pretty high number. We need more innovative housing and not just senior residences, which are far too expensive for most people living in Ottawa. Our 4th recommendation is to facilitate the coordination of services to expand the range of home and community care support services to promote and protect the health of older adults. Also a very challenging recommendation, as the funds for support services come from the federal and provincial government and are not entirely controlled by the municipal government, but they can be facilitate the coordination of these services. Canada has one of the lowest allocations to home care in the OECD, a meager 0.2% of GDP. Many countries such as Denmark, New Zealand, Germany spend more on home care over institutionalized care. A more integrated approach to the coordination of public health services with health teams, community organizations, and stakeholders would offer hope for a more holistic approach to the health and well-being of our cities. Number 5, this we were really successful with was to appoint an older adult liaison whose mandate would include housing in the list of issues affecting older adults. This would lead to the development of a comprehensive housing plan to meet the diverse housing needs of older adults. We have made progress with the particular recommendation. A motion was passed in 2023 at City Council to appoint a liaison coordinator to be an older adult advocate. We now have 2 older adult liaison counselors in Ottawa. We are hoping that this will ensure that the voices of older adults are heard and included in government decision-making. The role of the older adult is rapidly changing and evolving in communities. So the benefits, more cost-effective to enable older adults to live in their community as long as possible, contributes to better health and quality of life of older adults and their families. It's actually good for all ages. Young renters, low-income families, and people with disabilities have similar housing needs as older adults. And as Bonnie mentioned, older adults are consumers generating income for their community. They often work, they are entrepreneurs, they volunteer, and they support extended family. And finally, and really important to me, is that supporting housing for older adults will affirm and respect the equal place that older adults have in our society. So, moving on to our new little adventure on the Housing Committee is, we call it the More Than Four Walls, the housing needs of older adults in Ottawa. Excuse me. In the fall of 2023, as the next step in our municipal platform, we hosted a series of 7 age-friendly housing community conversations and released a survey to hear directly from older adults to better understand the housing needs and challenges of Ottawa's older adults. As part of the planning process, we searched to find out other cities and municipalities had engaged with older adults and their housing needs. We found the City of Vancouver's public consultation to develop its first seniors housing strategy. We received permission to use and adapt and translate both their community conversation guide and their survey for our initiative. Through a series of community conversations and a survey, we set out to identify the current and potential future age-friendly housing needs and challenges. We wanted to educate the public on the work of the Council on Aging, and we wanted to identify what the COA and the city could do to meet the housing needs of older adults in Ottawa. Okay, the data and the stories we collected from older adults received growing concerns about affordable and accessible housing and social connection. The findings, and this is fully in a nutshell, our report's not quite finished, suggest the need for a more affordable and accessible purpose-built age-friendly housing options, coordinated public health and home and community care that promotes and protects the health and safety of older adults as we age in place, and investment in innovative housing models for older adults. We are now in the process of developing a report. The report will provide an overview of what we did and the recommendations to explore further, including identifying those older adults living in unsuitable and unsatisfactory housing, educating the public, and informing our city policy. One thing that's really quite interesting is I was reading a CMHC report on age-friendly housing, and we're together on this, folks. We're on the same page. It's just we need to figure out how to get it all implemented in our cities. So age-friendly housing is more than 4 walls. It builds connections and community. Together, we can advance and address the diverse housing needs of older adults as part of our broader strategy to tackle the housing crisis and create inclusive communities for all ages. And our report should be coming out shortly within the next few months. So we will send it to you. And so I'm going to pass it on back to Grace, who is the other co-chair, and she's going to talk to you about innovative housing.
It's actually great that we ended this slide in terms of connections, because when we talk about innovative age-friendly housing models, one of the things that becomes apparent when you see the list is these are models that really encourage connection. And, you know, seniors so often talk about, or older adults talk about aging in place. And I like to think about it as aging in community. because I think that that's so important to the well-being, and that it's builds these supportive communities. So some of the models that we talk about when we engage with older adults are multi-generational housing, such as they have in Denmark, co-housing. In Ottawa, we only have one co-housing development, although it's quite popular out west. And co-living, the Golden Girls model, I think we've all are familiar with that. Co-op housing, and I was pleased to hear that there's going to be more support at the federal level for co-op housing. Coach housing is something that the city brought in recently, small homes that can be built on existing properties. Seniors villages, which have a range of housing availability, so that you can move from, as your housing and health needs change, you can move within the community. And finally, we talk about naturally occurring retirement communities. And this is one of the things I wanted to focus on during today's talks. So a naturally occurring retirement community is really just, it's by definition, is just a geographic designation for a rental, condo, co-op, or social housing building where at least 30% of the residents are older than 65 years old, and at least 50 people older than 65 live in the building or neighborhood. So they can be either vertical or horizontal, as in a neighborhood block or adult lifestyle bungalow community, but most NORCs tend to be vertical, and most NORCs tend to be apartment buildings. So most NORCs evolve over time as the residents age, or older adults may be attracted to certain rental buildings because they're located near good transportation and services. But a NORC is just a NORC until you add what is the key ingredient, and that is the SSP, which is the Supportive Service Program. And now I'm going to talk about that. So the whole concept, so the NORC is just a building or a geographic area, but what you can do is you can bring in programs that really help the residents successfully age in place by providing health, social, recreation, and educational supports. So the best example we have so these supports allow you to age in place longer and with a better quality of life. And the best example we have in Canada is the OASIS program that originated in Kingston, Ontario in 2011 and has now expanded to 19 sites across Canada. And we'll talk a little bit more about OASIS in Ottawa in a few moments. Also, the NORC Innovative Center through the Open Lab at the University Health Network in Toronto also supports around the same number of NORC SSPs. So Queens, McMaster, and Western support 19 NORCs, and the same number is supported by the NORC Innovation Center. So that's not very many when you consider how many people, how many older adults there are in Canada. So the key thing about the NORC SSP is that it is designed and implemented by the residents themselves through their social committee and collaboration, sometimes with outside supporters. So that's the key, is that these are resident-led programs that meet the needs of the people living in that building. So each NORC SSP will vary depending on the needs of the community that they're supporting. And why do we need NORC SSPs? I think we saw, I mean, when Bonnie gave us the numbers, we can see how many older adults are how we're aging as a population. And as we've noted, 90 to 6% of older adults want to stay in their home and avoid institutional care. And there's statistics that show that as much as 1 in 9 older adults could have avoided long-term care if they'd received support at home. And I think Val alluded, I mean, one of our key recommendations is we do need to have more home supports. And I think the NORC model is so great because it allows us to bring those supports that encourage healthy aging. So the essential requirements for a NORC, there needs to be shared indoor space, such as a communal kitchen for gatherings, so people can meet together and share meals. There needs to be a room for social recreational activities, and the types of activities that they could be things like yoga, exercise classes, courses, and they will vary again by the NORC on the needs of the residents in that particular NORC SSP. There also needs to be room for visiting health and social services. And a real bonus is when there is shared outdoor space. Again, that's kind of rare in many cases. But you know, if you have a patio, you could have outdoor barbecues. You could have a vegetable garden, which would engage the residents. And the key thing, as I've mentioned, is you need the commitment of the residents in the building because they're resident-led and they determine the use and management of the shared space and the supported services that they want in their community. There's a number of benefits. Right now, the Queen's Oasis project will be ending next year, and they'll be releasing their findings on the benefits of the Oasis program. But we already know that some of the social benefits, the key thing is they reduce social isolation. And we know that social isolation is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And the other thing that's so important is they provide older adults with opportunities to be productive and useful and engaged. So they can serve, for instance, on the volunteer board of directors that decide what programs they're going to offer within their building. They can also teach courses. They also really can help engage with other residents in the building and provide supports for those who might be more socially isolated. And in terms of economic benefits, there's quite a few. It's less expensive and more efficient to provide services to a building where there's a high number of older adults, as opposed to just providing services in single-family dwellings. The NORC Innovation Center has recently released a report on NORC-based home care models, which implemented would see significant gains in PSW productivity. And if you haven't read that report, I highly encourage you to do so because the savings are absolutely astounding if they go with that model. The other thing that NORCs do is they've already shown that it does prevent people from moving into long-term care homes because they're supported. They're doing physical fitness classes. They're engaging in other activities. They have their neighbors to rely on. They've established those connections. So certainly when they did the evaluation of the first Oasis program in Kingston, they did find that people were slowing down. They used emergency departments less. And if they can, you know, stay out of long-term care longer, it's a great thing. So it also addresses housing, health, and social needs and reduces the moving and relocation costs. And one of I think the benefits was to the building owners, because what happened is they ended up with lower vacancy rates. They had longer wait lists to get into their building. And in fact, many NORC buildings have a 0% vacancy rate. And one of the, and it's because the residents love living there and they encourage their friends to move into the building as well. So we're very fortunate. One of the as I mentioned, the Oasis Senior Supportive Living Kingston was the first NORC in, started in 2011. And then Western expanded to 6 other locations. And as well, the Open Lab within the University Health Network also supports NORC. So there's less than 40. And we're lucky here in Ottawa that we have the Oasis program came to Ottawa in 2022. And this is the website of the local, the Ottawa Oasis program. And I encourage, we'll be handing out the slides, right? Okay, so you can see at the top is the website for the Ottawa Oasis program. And you can actually, when you go to their website, you can actually see the list of the programs, their calendars. It's absolutely astounding. So this started in 2022 at the Ambleside. There were 3 buildings in Western Ottawa, just west of Woodruff. So through the Queen's Oasis program, there's a paid coordinator, and they work in partnership with Old Forge, which is a community resource center here in West Ottawa. And again, it's the people in Ambleside are the ones that are deciding what kinds of programs that they want within their community. And they actually call themselves the Ambleside Movement, which is, they're so committed and so engaged. And they have they partnered with a local pharmacy to offer on-site COVID and flu vaccines last fall. And most recently, they offered wellness clinics in partnership with the Ottawa paramedics and the Pinecrest Queensway Health Hub. You may have seen the article that was in the Ottawa Citizen in July. And we're lucky enough to sit on the steering committee. And now we have a second Oasis program also in a West Ottawa community. So, and lastly, I just wanted to show you our NORC Finder map. This is based on data that was provided by the University Health Network Open Lab. And we worked with the Ottawa Neighborhood Solutions. There's 170 NORC buildings in Ottawa, most of which lie in the Kitchissippi and Bay wards. So you can, if you go to this map, which is linked to from our website, you can find all the apartments and condo buildings that house older adults greater than 65 years old. These are just NORC buildings. These are not SSPs. We only have 2. And they don't include retirement homes or long-term care buildings. So you can use this map to find all kinds of information about older adults in our community, where the buildings are, the percentage of older adults in each building. For instance, if I had hovered over the Barclay on Dominion Avenue in Westboro, I would find that 73% of the residents are over 65. We are already using this map to target our program, some of our programming, our smart aging program, and our emergency preparedness course. So this is quite a useful tool. And we've already been contacted by Ottawa Public Health, who is going to use the map as well for some of their activities. So I encourage you all to look at the NORC Finder map and explore the amount of information you can find out about where older adults live in Ottawa. And I'm going to turn it over now to, is it Mary?
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grace. We educate ourselves. As you can see, we are an engaged group of volunteers. We've committed ourselves to learning about housing options as we age and to plan for our future needs. We educate ourselves with speakers, blogs, e-newsletters from various organizations. We even read CMHC reports. And we just found out about a very good report titled Developing a Housing Strategy for Age-Friendly Community. We meet once a month as a committee of concerned volunteers and have an annual work plan of what we want to accomplish. To inform others, we researched and produced and update a booklet, Housing Options in Ottawa, a Guide for Older Adults, including a checklist to use when considering housing options. It's downloadable and hard copies are distributed at events. We also organize public education sessions, as you heard earlier, community conversations, platforms for elections, surveys, meetings with politicians, meetings with similar non-government organizations. The Council on Aging Smart Aging program includes educational sessions on housing options as well as many other topics for older adults. Most importantly, we advocate for the voice of older adults in housing solutions in Ottawa. Come on. There we go. All right. Key messages. I'm going to conclude with key messages and then we'll go to questions. We boomers are living longer, healthier, independent lives. We may live well into our 80s, even 90s, independently. Because we're boomers, there's a lot of us. You saw that in the earlier statistics. We also have diverse needs, as you heard earlier, and we have a wide range of incomes that have to last us in older age. As you've already heard, a large majority of older adults want to live in their own home as long as possible. Few can afford retirement homes, and long-term care is only for those who need continual care. The best option for aging well is living independently in community. It's also, as you heard, far less drain on tax dollars compared to institutions. The 4 A's that we've developed, affordable, accessible, appropriate, and available, provides our checklist when considering options. It's outlined in our guide for housing options. It's really useful. Affordable housing is near crisis level, as you all know, which is the reason we advocate for nonprofit development. Innovative options, you've heard of some. Many options are being developed by individuals and organizations. Today, you heard about the successful NORCs with services organized by residents themselves to keep themselves independent. Innovative options to keep people out of expensive institutions and in housing that older adults can afford is a priority. Finally, we want to be involved in housing options and solutions. Thank you for attending. We're not concluding yet. We are quite open to any questions. Brianna, I can't see who's attending, so are you going? You can see who's attending?